Real quickly before we begin, I want to thank this video's sponsor, CarMarshal.com. CarMarshal.com can save you lots of money on buying used or new vehicles, cars, trucks, school buses. If you want to save money, I'll have a link in the description down below.
A mental health crisis for children in Lee and Collier counties. The NBC2 investigators uncover a huge increase in the number of kids being involuntarily committed for psychiatric care. Increases of more than 100% in 5 years.
Yeah, some people call it a breakdown in the system. Others call it proof the system is working. We sent NBC2 investigator Rachel Polanski to find out why the numbers are spiking.
Are you going in?
This little boy loves jumping on the trampoline and playing outside with his mom, Sandy. But life is not always fun and games.
He can't communicate with other people.
10-year-old Dominic Leibel has nonverbal autism. He has meltdowns, but his mom says he's never hurt himself or anyone else.
A kiss? Thank you.
That's why she was shocked to learn that he'd been taken from his Tampa school in January and involuntarily committed.
I saw them pull up in the police car, and I saw them carry Dominic out. His hands were cuffed behind his back. I felt like there was no compassion. Are you gonna tie it?
Under the Baker Act, Dominic was placed on a psychiatric hold, one that could have lasted up to 72 hours, because his school resource officer believed that he was a threat.
I didn't get to see him. They refused to allow me to see him. I didn't get to see him until later that evening.
Juvenile Baker Acts have increased 49% statewide over the last 5 years. And in Southwest Florida, the growth is even more stunning. 170% increase in Collier County, 136% increase in Lee, and 97% in Charlotte County.
As it stands right now, do you think there's a problem in Florida with the Baker acting of children?
I do. I think the percentage number is really alarming.
Last year, a state-funded task force spent months researching why the numbers are jumping. Public Defender Kathleen Smith was among its members. And while she says it's not possible to identify one root cause, she says social media, cyberbullying, and mass shootings are contributing factors.
The Baker Act really is only supposed to be used when there are no less restrictive alternatives that are available in the community. In Lee County, we do not have a comprehensive outpatient service network for children to access.
The task force also recommends alternatives to the Baker Act, like expanding access to outpatient treatment and adding more prevention and early intervention services to our community.
I think that if we had some different resources, we could prevent more crisis admissions.
Elizabeth Garcia, who works for Lee County's largest mental health care provider, Salus Care, says it all comes back to funding. Florida ranks 49th in per capita spending for mental health, and Lee County is one of the worst funded counties in the state.
In order for these programs to develop and meet the needs, there's got to be funding that goes right there with it.
And right now, she says the funding just isn't there in Lee County or Collier County.
If you don't have the resources to be able to add staffing, you have a limited number of staff and a limited number of services that can be provided.
But Scott Burgess, the CEO of the David Lawrence Center in Collier County, doesn't see the spike in juvenile Baker Acts as a bad thing.
We have a greater sense of awareness around these issues, which I think is an absolutely great thing.
His staff works directly with the Collier County Sheriff's Office and the school district.
It shows that we are looking and identifying kids that have problems.
Collier County Public Schools Superintendent Kamala Patton believes the increase in juvenile Baker Acts is a product of that partnership.
So we're keenly aware of that number, but proud that we've been on this, working on it.
It helped me in a way to open my eyes.
15-year-old Sarah Daugherty suffers from depression and PTSD.
I just remember I'm being so sad about everything.
She's been Baker acted twice.
I was cleaning her room and I got the wake-up call as a parent.
And Sarah's mom, Karen, is the one who called police and had her Baker acted the first time.
There was razors, it was, blood everywhere, there were suicide notes, you name it, she had it. And I'm like, this is bigger than what I really thought it was.
When used as intended, Karen says the Baker Act can help young people, like it did Sarah. But when used inappropriately,
my son is 10 years old. He's autistic. He's not mentally ill.
It can also be a traumatic experience for a frightened child like Dominic.
I was angry with the school
and his family.
Because this shouldn't have happened.
For the NBC2 investigators, I'm Rachel Polanski.
Within the last 5 years, What we were seeing is children were threatening to harm themselves, or they were having aggression, signs and symptoms of mental illness. And then they weren't really acting on it as much. We've seen an increase on their actions of what they're saying, what they're planning, they're following through with. Like I said earlier, a lot of overdoses, a lot of cutting, some self-mutilation behaviors, a lot of depression. And for some reason, children are seeing suicide as an option.
We're the one county that has all of our deputies trained in crisis interventions. So that means our deputies here in Collier have extra training to identify that student that might need that Baker acting. So those numbers might be higher, but that's a good thing. That means that we have people trained in our county from our deputies that know how to identify a problem, not just say, oh, that child's whatever, and walk away. So we need to get those additional funds to provide the services for what those kids need. And then in the schools for us, when we have more of those, again, social workers and psychologists that can also help connect up to those services. So we're keenly aware of that number, but proud that we've been on this, working on it, have a sheriff that is working to ensure that his folks know how best to help a youngster in need.
I think the percentage number is really alarming. And I think the task force has identified several very important reasons why that could have happened. And part of it has to do with the fact that people that are in the schools, school resource officers, teachers, counselors, social workers have gone through CIT training, which is crisis intervention training. So they are better equipped to identify when kids are in crisis. Second, we have seen an alarming rise in bullying and in social media, and basically kids just don't have the coping skills to deal with that. And third, and most importantly, I think, is the deficit in funding that we have for mental health here in Florida. We have hovered at 48, 49, 50th in the state, or in the country, in mental health funding. And this amazing lack of funding, I think, leads us to the only option of Baker acting children rather than dealing with them on an outpatient basis.
Well, there's some data, national data and other research that would indicate that probably in every American classroom there's 3 or 4 students that are struggling with some sort of social emotional issue, and probably 70 to 80% of them are not receiving any care at all. So there's a lot of what we would say is silent suffering that's going on. And unless there are interventions that are put in place where we can kind of screen kids and determine what's happening there, we're not going to be able to identify it early, and things are just going to get worse. So if we're able to do earlier screening, identification, and then intervention in the sense of offering treatment, we know that we can literally help change children's life trajectories. We know that anytime you treat something just like any other health condition, you treat it earlier, the better the short and the long-term prognosis. So if we can get to these kids and provide them the appropriate level of service early on, we can help out with their attendance with school, we can help out with their graduation rates, we can help reduce juvenile justice, we can ensure that kids then go on to secondary education, gainful employment, staying out of the law enforcement system as adults. So all of those indicators are improved by all the research that's out there already. We know that we can do this, but we have to catch it early.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I just wanted you to know that I am using this stuff under fair use. And also remember to like and subscribe this channel. Also too, keep in mind I do not make any money on YouTube. This is 5 hours work a day, you know, fighting for freedom. And you can donate with PayPal and Patreon. I just want you to think about this. If everybody gives to PayPal and Patreon, Patreon is every month. Actually, PayPal you can do every month. I have 12,000 subscribers. If everybody gives, I can quit my regular job and go full-time investigations on Charlotte County and possibly even more and beyond. So just keep that in mind. If everybody helps out, I can go full-time doing this. Thanks.